Live in Corporate is brought to you by Doximity. Doximity is committed to fostering an inclusive and diverse work environment where differences are valued, practices are equitable, and employees experience a sense of belonging that allows them to bring their full, authentic selves daily. As medicine's largest network, there's an elevated level of responsibility to everything we do. We don't take that responsibility lightly and are committed to working towards a more equitable world inside and beyond our virtual office walls. So if you want to learn more about Doximity, go to your app store and type in DOXIMITY. Again, that's DOXIMITY.
So hey, how you doing? My name is Vonda Page, and I am the Radical Results Mentor for leaders looking to level up to legend. And that means that I advise and guide leaders in whatever space, right? Whether we're talking corporate, whether we're talking entrepreneurial, healthcare, CEO, nonprofit, education, higher ed, or whatever. But I advise and guide leaders for them to be able to grow and thrive in an ever changing, all encompassing, transformational environment in which we live. And I think that this moment is really calling for us to be brave. So welcome for those of you who are tuning in. I hope that you are binging. This is episode number 7. When White People Have Had Enough is a podcast that is all about this revelation that hit me hardest on June 24th, that Friday when Roe v. Wade officially was overturned. And it hit me hardest that, when white people finally have had enough, they will take some actions. But it also hit me at the same time is maybe they don't know what actions they need to take. Maybe there is really beyond all of this amazing education that's happening, beyond all of the amazing resources, beyond all of the consultancies that have spun up in this diversity, equity, and inclusion space that we are hearing more and more about every day, is, the concepts and the issues that must be dealt with. And for me, the reason that I am a mentor for leaders looking to level up to legend is because the leadership that we have right now is not meeting the moment. And this moment is dire. So on June 24th, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I realized, well, damn, literally white people gonna have to figure something out, and they haven't had enough yet. So the racism of the 45th presidency was not enough for y'all. Charlottesville wasn't enough for y'all. Sandy Hook wasn't enough for y'all. Uvalde wasn't enough for y'all. There is nothing that has happened yet that has made white people say, the network moment, hey, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it no more, and go off and start throwing your TVs out the window, right? And so the way I look at it is that when you, as a collective group of white people, have talked to your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues and coworkers and bosses and subordinates and cousins and aunts and uncles and shopkeepers and gym members and church members, and have said, this is like bananas, y'all. This is like, this is like on another level, and we need to do something. Nothing is going to change, because I'm going to tell you, Black and Indigenous people been crying out. We've been crying out since the day one. We've been crying out since y'all drug Black people over here. And the fact that we are still not talking about, genocide and slavery in a way that makes people understand how bad it was, and that we're still dealing with it, to the tune of like America is not going to do shit to go back on what we have going on. Like, they're not going to give Indigenous people shit. And I keep on asking the question, why won't they at least give them the parks? Like, this is what I feel like they could do to save face. I feel like America could say, we are going to return to all the indigenous tribes that are in America right now every national park that we have said this is a national park or a state park that was not built like these city parks and things that you have in certain areas, we're going to give that back. Even if they just gave that back, I could imagine, and I do not know, but I could imagine some members of some indigenous communities being like, wow, that was something. But like, we won't give them back anything. And I just think that's disgusting. But besides that, the way that Africans, enslaved African human beings, enslaved African peoples were treated during slavery and bred like animals was purely to just prop up business. The whole slave trade, the whole, pioneering and founding of this country and all of that manifest destiny bullshit was a grift because they saw it was some fertile land and some good soil. And then they saw it was people here and they said, okay, well, we want it. And they decided to take it for themselves. That is history. And the fact that white people are still denying that all over this country, not just, where I live in the Pacific Northwest, but everywhere. And so until we can grapple with that, we're going to keep on encountering these same issues and the same problem. And so in this episode of When White People Have Had Enough, I'm going to say, y'all going to be brave, right? And Sarah Bareilles talk about letting the light in, right? Right? She's saying, don't run, right? Right? And she's saying, let the light in, let it in, right? And so what I'm going to tell you is the light, right? The light is the truth. The light is the goodness. The light is what's good. The light is what needs to be exposed. The light is what uncovers the darkness, right? So if you are a person who grew up in any type of Christian type of church, I didn't really go to too much Catholic church, even though my daughter went to Catholic school for 2 years. We went to Baptist church. We also went to African Methodist Episcopal church. We went to regular white Episcopal church. We went to Church of God in Christ. I've been to synagogue. And of course, I've been to bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And of course, I've been to, Yom Kippur and Shabbat dinners. I was just trying to think of Christian faith where you talk about light overcoming darkness, right? So letting the light in, right? And doing some shadow work, right? And like getting into who you are. So let's talk about what does it look like to be brave, right? As a white person. And what does it look like at this moment? So the thing that comes to mind, right? When I think about Sarah Bareilles, she says, say what you want to say and let the words come out honestly, right? Honestly, right? So if you are a white person who really believes that the America is going in the wrong direction, that you don't really see an improvement in racism in terms of it getting less. You don't really see, Black people dying in any lesser amounts, right? You don't see anything really changing. And you actually see whether it's your own complicity or someone else's, whether you see your own actions or someone else's, whether you see the impact of actions on other people through your individual actions of something that you yourself are doing, or whether you see that through somebody else's, what the question is. And so what I'm asking and what I'm challenging you to do at this moment is to be brave and ask yourself, what is true for you? What do you actually believe about anything? What do you believe about humanity and human beings? Because I would like to start there, because I believe, as you will hear me talk about probably until my last dying day, that we must alleviate anti-Blackness. And we must alleviate anti-Blackness because anti-Blackness is the foundation that all of this corrupt and careless capital structure has been based on. And I wasn't even trying to do the whole alliteration that time. Not even. It's now happening more natural, I think, because I'm just being more like, into myself and just kind of being just, going with the flow. But that's what it is, right? It's corrupt, it's careless, but that's what capitalism is based on. And so anti-blackness, right, is that thing that helps white people overlook pain that each other is going to, because they know it'll never be as bad for them because at least they are not black. And I need for people to absorb and understand that that is where we are in this world. So when I think about being a kid, right, and I don't think I told this on here, but I was darker as a young person. And I guess, as you get older, your skin ages or whatever, you get a little lighter, you get a little darker. My mother actually got a little darker as she got older. I feel like I've gotten a little bit lighter, but maybe I'm really the same. And it's just that because I was darker than so many people in my family, it seems like I was extremely dark as a kid. But if you look at me now, some people even say that I'm light skinned. I think I'm medium, but people say, I'm light, but I kind of feel like I'm medium. But maybe that's just because I grew up being called Blackie and being, teased for being darker. But that's because, most people in my family were lighter for a while. And then things did change, years later. When one of my cousins was born, he's dark skinned, and then all of a sudden they stopped calling me that. And so I don't know, what changed for them, but it stopped. And I do have other people in my family that are darker than I am, and my daughter is darker than I am. And so when I think about how anti-blackness shows up in terms of the conditioning, which we are all subject to for white people, is different. And I had a conversation with a white person yesterday. And we were talking about, the conditioning and how being a liberal white person is part of the problem, right? And how being of course everybody is human and everybody has this and da da da. But that's part of the problem, because if no work was ever done to assure these human places, if no work was ever done to put these things into place, then how were these structures going to be maintained, right? And so the work of a white person, right, when you have had enough, because you're not going to be able to do this work until you've had enough. So that's why in the, previous episodes, right, I talk about unpacking your stuff, right? Unpacking your shit and really being able to look at yourself honestly and see who you are. And when you do that, you'll be able to let the words come out of what you need to say, and you'll be able to be brave because you'll be standing on who you are. So I had a conversation with a friend today, and this person was basically talking about how they were struggling in a class because they don't have physical presence and they're not athletic. And so how they were struggling in this class because they didn't feel powerful. And I said, oh, wow, that's really interesting, because I think, I don't feel powerful right now because I can't really lift heavy weights, because I haven't really lifted heavy weights really since George Floyd died, because I've been depressed about that. And I have struggled to get my exercise routine back on track, even though I had a 3-year thing going, where I was going 7 days a week. And so COVID, I stopped and I still was working out. But then after George Floyd, it just got to really be too much. And so I didn't gain weight or anything like that. In fact, I probably lost 10 pounds or something like that since COVID, or 15 maybe. But I don't feel strong, but I feel strong enough that I know that if I'm out in the street and something pop off, trust me, I know how to take care of myself with my two hands, right? A and B, left and right, joy and pain, right? It's not really that, it's not that serious for me. So I never really feel physically whatever. But when I don't feel as strong and muscular because I haven't been working out, then I definitely don't feel as secure, but I definitely feel powerful, and I definitely have presence, and I definitely have command. So for example, when I do a speech, or if I'm coming across a stage, I'm like, I'm rolling, and I'm feeling good in me because I know who I am. Now, my friend that I was talking to was talking about how she doesn't feel good in who she is. And so that example of her trying to exhibit physicality and athleticism in an environment where she's not used to doing it, she was talking about how she felt so terrible and she couldn't even like get herself together. And I was like, wow, I'm actually building a boxing gym in my basement, or in my garage. I don't have a basement in this house. In my garage, because I don't have a basement, and I don't have enough room like in my loft area where my other stuff is to really put the heavy bag and the speed bag there. Even though I can jump rope up here. So anyway, I was telling her I'm doing that in my garage because I love boxing, because boxing gets you cut. Like boxing will drop any unnecessary fat that you have. If you eat the right diet when you box, you can get cut very slim very quickly. And it's such a good sweaty workout. But I love boxing and punching on the heavy bag because it just makes you feel really, really strong. And I like knowing that my body weight is strong enough, right? That if somebody, was my size, or 20 pounds bigger or 40 pounds bigger, that they not going to take me out without a fight. And I just like that feeling of knowing like, And plus I took self-defense in school. And I've been in a lot of fights, and I do not say that with any kind of pride, but it's just the facts I just have. And so I, can handle myself, but I don't want to, because I never want to hurt another person. And I always think back to when I was a kid, and I used to just tell people, please leave me alone. And I used to always let people hit me 2 times all the time, because I used to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to jack this person up. Please don't hit me. Please don't. And so I could be just whatever. Somebody grab my backpack and I'd be like, yo, you better back up. Oh, what you going to do? And then they push me, and then pow. So I always give people 2 chances, right? Like you get 2, but that third, but like you don't get 3. You don't get 3. Like I'm like, hey, that's your warning. Hey, I already told you, third, that's it. Like there's 1, 2, and third is out. And so when I was talking to my friend about that, she was just like, wow, yeah, you're really powerful. You're really strong. Da, da, da. And I'm like, that's not even something that I have strived to be in my life. I haven't tried to be strong or powerful, right? I just have been, because my circumstances have put me in those circumstances, right? My circumstances have put me in those situations, right? Situations have put me in those circumstances. And so the outcome of being in a lot of adversity, the outcome in experiencing a lot of trauma, the outcome of being continually abused or picked on or hit or pushed or smacked or whatever, and having to physically fight or defend yourself, that is not something that any person be like, oh yeah, I'm glad I learned. I'm not glad, but every now and then I'm sure damn glad that I know how to fight. But also I'm from Philly, y'all, so I've seen every Rocky movie like 1,000 times. I'm rewatching the Creed now. That's the best soundtrack. Creed 2 soundtrack. Yeah. That's a good soundtrack. So, all of that, right? That bravery or that strength or that resilience or whatever, it's not because I want to be. It's because I've had to be because of my circumstances. And so if you think about the experience of white people in America, where for the most part, unless you are poor or disabled, right? You don't have as bad of a life as Black people. And even if you are poor and disabled, you need to recognize that a Black person that's poor and disabled, their life is worse than yours, because it's always worse. And that is what you got to be willing to accept. And that's what you got to be willing to understand. And that's the same thing you have to be willing to work towards changing. But before you can do that, right, you have to be brave, and you got to do your own shadow work. You can Google all of that, right? I think I said last time told you to get The Body Keeps the Score. Get that book. Get the audio version if you can get that in a different format without having to spend it on the person who owns everything. Just I like don't want to give him my damn $14.99 a month just because he's already getting it from 100 million other freaking people. So the hell with him. So anyway, get that book, and as you start to listen to it and you see those things that you're triggered by, the bravery is going into them. The bravery is digging into it. The bravery is asking yourself questions that you hadn't previously asked yourself. The bravery is being willing to sit with being discomfort and don't let the shadow win, right? The bravery is saying, okay, well, I learned some messed up stuff. I learned, racism. I learned a lot of misogyny. I learned a lot of homophobia. I definitely learned a lot of ableism. I think we all learned that. But that was all on purpose. And that's the thing that you have to realize. All of the conditioning that we have, the things that we believe about disabled people, the things we believe about Black people, Latino people, Asian people, poor people, the things that we believe are the things that the media has fed us to believe. The things that we believe are the things that churches and our houses of worship and spiritual guidance places have taught us to believe. The things that we believe are the things that our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents often believed and passed down to us. So now the question is, what are you going to do about what was passed down to you? Are you going to reject the nonsense and the bullshit and the crap? Or are you going to bring it along with you and just ignore everything like you don't know what's happening? Because in the bridge of the song, she basically says, when has silence ever gotten anything done? Like, so if you think about all the problems and everything that's happening right now, what could have been solved if we had at least been talking about the shit? But instead, we're not doing nothing. Instead of we just acting like it doesn't exist. And I'm blaming that on white people. Because Black people, indigenous people, we've been saying for the longest time. And when Black Lives Matter came out, I remember saying, damn, we is really at the point, y'all, where we have to beg white people to believe that Black lives just matter in this country. We had to beg to matter. Because y'all refuse to let us matter. Because you always know, just like Lyndon Baines Johnson said, that at least you're not Black, and so it's fine. And so the white people who are poor and the ones who kids going to be pregnant at 12 and 13 and they're going to be working jobs and you're going to be a grandmother at 30 and 32 and 33 and you're going to be like, oh my God, this is because y'all haven't had enough yet and you haven't seen or experienced enough hardship or anything that's making you decide for yourself that you're ready to turn this around. You haven't experienced anything that's made you say, nah, I'm good. And so what I want to challenge you to do now in this episode is be brave. So let's talk about what does it look like to be brave, right? So if I say, okay, what does it look like to be brave? Okay. So if I have to say, all right, well, if I was a white person, right? The first thing I think about what it would look like to be brave in this moment is I would first and foremost want to uncover my family history. Period. First and foremost, I would want to uncover my family history. And what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, you need to talk to your living relatives and make sure that your living relatives are telling you the truth about, your bloodlines. But find out about your relatives. Get your family tree written down if you don't already have it. And then start talking to the oldest people in your family and ask some questions. Period. That's all you can start. Be brave. Ask your family some questions. Ask your family about your background. Find out if your family was here before the 19th century. If your family came over here in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century, you need to ask some very detailed questions and you need to find out, did your family own slaves? I recommend you do some ancestry DNA type of situations where you use one of them apps and you put your saliva in a jar and figure out your ancestry so you can start to trace some of your own stuff, and you can find out for yourself if you're Irish or Scottish or English or Slovakian or, Russian or whatever, right? So you can find out, because that's going to be the key. And so I think that's the bravery, because I did a post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I guess it was, asking people that work in the DEI space if they've traced their heritage, and they said no. So I'm saying, how are you going to do work about freeing anybody? How are you doing work about emancipation? How are you doing work about liberation? How are you doing work about diversity, equity, inclusion, and you haven't done your own internal examination, especially as a white person, to understand who you are and how you fit in? So how do you make amends, and how do you do anything if you don't even know how you fit into the equation? Did your family own slaves? Yes or no? If your family owned slaves, what did you do? And how have you gone back and, rectified the damage? That's a legitimate question. And I feel like that's a question that needs to be asked of white people that are engaged in D&I work, period. If white people are working in DEI as their main job, that is their work every day, and yet they have not done any type of understanding about who they are and understand the complicity of their bloodlines and their current complicity in, the harm of Black people, then why are they doing the work? So at some point, until you can understand your complicity, past or present, there's going to be a block there. And the thing is, I have to go back to the statistic that 40% of white women owned slaves. 40% of the slave owners were white women at the time. Okay? And so white women gave up their autonomy, right, as business women, as their own persons, right? They gave it up to participate in anti-Blackness and to support and prop up racism, right? So that they could be on top. And so after June 24th, and it was again proven that white men hate white women, just like they hate everybody else, right? Men will stick up for themselves when it comes to this patriarchal system and those who want to keep the patriarchal system like that. So the question is, do you want to keep moving in the direction that this system is taking us? Because this system is taking us in not good places. And there is no denying it. There is no getting around it. There is no playing with it. There is no acting like it doesn't exist, because the truth of the matter is it does exist. And it is that simple. Period. The bottom line is, white people, because you are not used to metabolizing strong feelings, because you are not used to, dealing with your pain, right? There is this thing that every emotion that you experience is painful to you because you're not used to having any pain. And I'm not talking about the pain of being abused as a kid, or pain of a car accident, or the pain of a migraine, or the pain of, some kind of health problems. I'm just talking about the pain of life, the pain of everyday living, period. Black people have just pain for living. And that's a pain that white people don't have, even poor white people. Because at the end of the day, you can say, what? Boom. At least I'm not Black. So when white people have had enough, you're going to step into this bravery. And and stepping into being brave is part of unpacking your shit. It is. It is. But what I'm saying is, when you have had enough, you are going to be brave. You're going to uncover
first and foremost, right, who your folks is and your family and what kind of shenanigans they was up to, right, before you got on the planet. Because whatever was happening, if your peoples was here in 1493, 1527, 1618, 1619, whenever they got here, okay, if they got here before 1864, what was they doing? That's my question. So the answer is you need to find out what they were doing. And I know that's going to take some bravery. So, okay, how do you do that? First and foremost, you need to ask your parents. But what you can do on the side without even doing that is you can get online and look for one of the reputable DNA companies and, do the package. The other thing you could do is you can research birth records. But I recommend you do the saliva and let them test it and see what it comes up for you. Mine told me that I am 89% Nigerian, and I'm just glad that I'm African, and I just feel extremely proud. It made me feel blacker than ever. I was super happy to be black, because I just like, okay, less cream got poured in the coffee on this side, and it makes me happy. And so I'm happy about that, and I can't wait to go to Nigeria and look at people that I'll be like, oh my God, we look alike, and it's going to be like amazing to look in people's faces and be like, oh my God, we are related for sure, like literally. And so, for me, right, doing that DNA, it did a lot for me on so many levels. Number one, it helped to clear up a lot of misconceptions and bullshit that I was always fed in my life about we're mixed with all this, and we mix with this and mix with that. Because it's no way I could be 89% Nigerian, and I don't have my father's DNA or whatever, meaning, I don't have his information. So meaning between my mom and my father, and the chromosomes and the DNA and everything, I'm still 89% Nigerian. So my mom and her family talking about we mix with all these different ethnicities don't make sense, because I wouldn't be 89% Nigerian. So it wasn't true. It was more anti-blackness showing up, right? And so one of the ways anti-blackness shows up for black people is in black people trying to say that they mix with all kind of stuff because we know it's more pleasing to white people to think that we're not black. And so uncovering, right, unpacking anti-blackness, being brave as a white person, and being able to examine who you are, part of it is going to be examining that, because it's going to be a key indicator for you of how anti-blackness shows up in your life anyway, and what does it look like. And so be brave and get into it. Like, get into it. I think about things that white people do. And not saying black people don't do some stuff, but like I think about things like when Survivor first came out and all this kind of stuff. And you ain't never seen no black people on them shows and things like that in the beginning. Jordan Peele is just like taking off amazing from being a horror, going from a comedian to a horror movie, expert, right? And like this is gonna be his genre, like black horror movies, like there's things that black people, maybe didn't do or maybe weren't into that, maybe when white people first got into them, it might have felt scary to step in, right? So maybe for Jordan Peele as a comedian might have thought like, oh, it's going to be scary to step into a space that is a white people space, right? Horror movies like or whatever. So if you think about stepping into something as a white person, it is way much easier to step into discomfort. It's way easier to step into newness. It's way easier to step into initiation of anything, right? And implementation if you're white, because you don't have the barrier of being black. You always have at least you're not black. And so my thing is, when white people have had enough, they'll use that. But you'll use it, that bravery, right? And you'll let the light in. So what I want to tell you is, when you find out about your history, right? That's going to be the light. That's the bravery. Find out about your history and then start to unpack, okay, what does it bring up for you? And then what do you want to do about it? Period. What does it bring up for you, and what do you want to do about it? You want to be brave in the standpoint of this is your life and you're in control and you are fully capable of taking charge of how you want to live it and move forward. And you don't have to live in a cauldron of lies, right? And made up stuff and colorblind, eyes closed, everybody is the same, I don't see color. If you know that your great grandfather's, family owned slaves. And I'm not saying all white people's families own slaves, but I'm saying if y'all were here in the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th century, if you didn't own slaves, you worked on plantations with slaves, next to slaves, or you worked for people doing other work, but you weren't quite a slave yourself. You might have been a field hand or a sharecropper or something like that. If your family was here a long time ago. Otherwise, your family owned slaves. And so the thing is, what you're going to do going forward is where the bravery is necessary to put it into place. And so I'm going to say, research your heritage, your real heritage, not that fake Confederate flag bullshit. Research your real heritage and find out who you are. Find out from your family what your background is, and then decide for yourself what you're going to do about it. That is not saying tell your family, oh, well, we need to do this and we need to do that. You decide. Period. You get to decide. And so I'm asking you and encouraging you to decide to be brave today. I'm saying that when you have had enough of the status quo, when you have had enough of the way things are going, when you feel like you do not like the direction in which things are heading, you will be brave. You're not going to run. You're going to let the light in. You're going to say what needs to be said. You're going to let the words come out honestly. And those words can be for you, right? Because you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say you need to do your work personally. You need to do the work privately. And of course, you need to do that work professionally. But when you have had enough, you're going to do it. And it takes some bravery. So listen to some Sarah Bareilles and see if that don't get you in your little brave, and get some motivation and get some little Eminem in there. I bet y'all was surprised I didn't come on with some hardcore something. But, brave is what I'm feeling, and brave is what I want to see. And I know that y'all can do it. So, hey, when white people have had enough, you're going to unpack your shit. And part of unpacking your shit is being brave. Don't run, right? Letting this light in. And I want to see you next time. This is Vonda Page, the Radical Results Mentor for leaders looking to level up to legend. And hey, we are going to learn together. Let's level up together. But I want white people to be brave. You can do it. Appreciate y'all. I'll see you next time. Bye.
When you're building a culture of belonging, every word counts. That's why Textio brings the world's most advanced language insights into your hiring and employer brand content. Our industry-leading approach to artificial intelligence and machine learning provides the tools needed to find more diverse candidates. In short, Textio builds more equitable workspaces, guiding businesses and writing more inclusive job posts. And we're building on that success by bringing even more products to the market for all people who share our belief that language matters. Words have power, and at Textio, we harness that power to increase the access and availability of value-driven work for everyone.